I stopped at an old gas station where dust hung in the air so thick you could drink it like warm water. My fingers trembled, not from coffee, but from the road and from what was behind me. I did not say names so they would not have power over me. I needed fuel, a cold soda, and a minute of silence. Instead, I found a mirrored storefront with a sign that said "No checks" and a man by the pump who looked at me as if he knew I carried lies in my backpack along with a toothbrush. He was tall, weathered face, scars on his knuckles, focused like a hunter trained never to blink. "Car trouble?" he asked. His voice was hoarse but not harsh. "With the world," I answered and smiled in a way that looked like a joke. He said his name was Vincent. He didn't shake my hand, just nodded, and I liked that restrained gentleness. Former cop, he admitted it as if confessing to a crime. I nodded back, though a cold wave rose inside me. The police were the other side of the door I had slammed shut 3 months ago. We stood in silence, staring at the horizon where the sun was breaking happiness into orange dust. I asked how far to the nearest motel. He offered to lead the way, so you won't get lost. I almost said no, but my yes came out heavier with exhaustion than trust. I imagined myself as a blacked in his rearview mirror, and somehow it became easier to breathe. When we pulled out, I felt the wheels of my car erase yesterday's tracks. If only the shadows would not follow. The sign flickered between green and emptiness. The room smelled of old chlorine, the air conditioner groaned like an angry dog. I locked the door with every bolt and pressed my forehead to the cool glass. A chain of light from the pool cut the night into squares. Vincent had stopped in the room next to mine. I heard the faucet turn, the sofa creak, one sound, then silence, like after a gunshot when even crickets stop their strings. I didn't ask myself why his rhythm mattered to me. Maybe because another's movements gave form to my blurred shadow. I pulled my phone from the backpack, turned off geolocation for the 3rd time today, erased the last calls as if peeling off skin. I wanted to believe I was just a grain of sand in a storm, but storms always find their own grains. A knock at the door, 2 soft raps. I froze, then asked, "Who's there?" "It's me," he said. "Brought ice." "You looked overheated in the car." The ice in the plastic cup clicked like teeth on a clock. He stood in the doorway, not crossing the threshold, the ethics of a predator who doesn't enter without invitation. I nodded, took the cup, brushed his scars with my fingers. I wanted to ask where they came from, but I was one who first heals her own wounds. "If you need to, the night clerk falls asleep around 3, he whispered. Easy to slip out unnoticed. "And you?" "I'm used to not sleeping." I laughed. The night was long, and we were both in its belly. When he left, I touched the ice to my lips. The salty taste was my memory of the sea I hadn't seen in years. We left before dawn. The road unrolled like a film reel, and I realized I was no longer alone. It was dangerous to give someone my silence. But when his pickup swallowed the miles ahead, I could sleep in my car parked on the shoulder, and my dreams were simple. I walked across the sand, and behind me, someone's hand that didn't drag but held. At the second gas station, he pulled aside the curtain of the coffee machine. I caught my reflection in the metal panel, weathered face, freckles, eyes that had learned not to shine. Vincent watched longer than polite. I thought he saw not the me of today but the girl before the escape, the one who believed names couldn't wound. "Someone on your trail?" he asked. I swallowed coffee. "Lies weigh more than sugar." "No." He nodded. He didn't believe, but he accepted. That too was a kind of tenderness, not breaking locks all at once. Then I noticed a woman in a red scarf who passed our cars 3 times and accidentally photographed the gas price sign. A muscle in Vincent's cheek twitched. The air turned to glass. "We'll drive separately for 10 miles, he said. "Meet by the bridge over the dry riverbed. If someone follows me, I'll throw them off." "And if it's me they're after?" He smiled with one corner of his mouth, sad and tender. "Then I'll be jealous of your demons." "Jealous?" the word dropped into me like a stone in a well. I didn't know him, but I felt he had already chosen me as his pain. I waited at the bridge that hung over dry land like a memory of rain. The wind unraveled my hair, and for the first time I wanted to be ugly, invisible, traceless. His pickup was late. I counted down from 20, a trick to calm the heart. At 10 I saw a cloud of dust. At 2, headlights. At 0, his eyes. "All good," he said. She followed me but lost me at the fork. We stood beneath the bridge in the strip of shade. I felt his exhaustion like a missing pulse in my ears after a run. I wanted to touch his shoulder but kept my hands to myself. Touch always takes something away. "Tell me the truth, at least to me," he asked quietly. "I know the color of fear." I sat on the concrete, its chill grounding me. I told not everything, only what I could bear aloud, the name of the person I trusted, the contract that smelled of gasoline, the small favor that turned out to be a key to someone else's safes. I said I didn't steal, only stood nearby. But being nearby was also a crime. "I'm no saint," he sighed. "But if you tell me to stop, I'll stop." "Don't stop," I begged. "I've stood still for years." Something like relief flickered in his eyes. And something like danger. Because where people are willing to change their path for you, the shadows start running faster. I took one step toward him, one that smelled of dust and mint from his gum. We rented a room in a roadside sun motel where curtains were heavier than conscience. The electricity blinked now and then, smoke drifted under the door. For the first time, I allowed myself a long hot shower and a sudden sharp laugh without reason. He sat on the floor with his back against the bed, holding my empty cup like a piece of evidence. "I'm jealous," he said suddenly. "Of the road, of your silence, of those who still have your number. You have no right to that." "I know. And still I'm jealous." His honesty opened doors inside me I had wanted to brick shut. I sat beside him, our knees touching, a simple contact, like a child's first word. He smelled of asphalt after heat, and that scent was gentler than any perfume. "I'm no gift, Vincent," I whispered. "I'm all knots. I like untangling difficult problems." We kissed, not like those who find a home, but like those who finally dare to set fire to their fear. There was no hurry in the kiss, but there was a vow we hadn't spoken yet. In the next room someone laughed, a television blared in the hallway, somewhere a dog howled. Our hearts beat in different tempos but slowly aligned. Later we lay in darkness, and I realized, love is not a light that banishes darkness. It is a small flame we carry in our palms, shielding from the wind. And if it goes out, it won't be the storm's fault, but ours. The morning began before sunrise. We drove in silence, the headlights carving through darkness that slowly bled into gold. Vincent's truck moved ahead of me, and I caught myself keeping the exact distance, as if it were a dance. 20 meters of asphalt between us, yet it felt like his breath was near my face. On the shoulder I noticed tire marks, fresh, as if laid down only hours ago. When we stopped to rest, I pointed them out. He bent down, touched the tracks with his fingers, as though reading words I could not understand. "They're after you," he said calmly. I wanted to answer, "after us," but the words stuck to the roof of my mouth. Two fears fought in me, losing myself and losing him. He looked at me as if he saw the storm inside. "If you want to disappear alone, I won't stop you." But I only nodded, took a sip of warm water from my bottle. And for the first time, I felt my escape no longer belonged only to me. In a small town we stopped for coffee. I stepped out of the car and immediately felt it, eyes on me. A man near the newspaper rack, dark glasses, wide-brimmed hat. He did not move, only watched. Vincent noticed him too. He gripped my elbow, firm but gentle. We walked past, and he whispered, "Don't look back." But I did. And I caught the man's smile, too calm, too familiar. That night in the motel I sat on the bed, hands trembling despite my efforts to hide it. Vincent pulled a gun from the glove compartment, checked the magazine, and said, "I promised myself I'd never go back to this. But it seems I have no choice." His eyes were darker than night. And in them I saw not only fear, but jealousy that this stranger dared look at me as though he had a right. We fled the town before dawn. The road was empty, only sand devils dancing in the distance. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers whitened. "Stop," he said suddenly. We stepped out. He lit a cigarette, though I'd never seen him smoke. The smoke blended with morning fog. "Why are you silent?" I asked. "Because if I say more than I should, you'll run." His voice was firm, but his eyes betrayed something else. I moved closer, plucked the cigarette from his hand, threw it into the sand. He smiled at the corner of his mouth, then kissed me suddenly. It was not tenderness, it was survival. It was two people against the world. I felt the fire in us could burn everything around. And still I did not pull away. That night we stopped at an abandoned trailer park. The air conditioner was dead. We sat outside, listening to crickets play us music. I touched his arm and saw another scar. He laughed, but the laugh was bitter. This one, from a knife. This, from a crash. And this, he paused. "From who?" "From myself," he said quietly. I didn't know how to react. I just laid my head on his shoulder. He flinched, as if surprised that someone could accept his darkness. That night I realized something. His scars were my jealousy. I envied the past, the people who had left those marks on him. And at the same time I wanted to be the one who would leave a different scar, not visible, but deeper. The phone rang at midnight. A blocked number. I pressed my hand over my mouth so my breathing wouldn't give me away. Vincent picked up instead. "She's with me," he said into the receiver. "And you're not getting her." I didn't know who was on the other end. But two feelings battled inside me: fear, because my past had found me, and love, because for the first time he had said she's with me like a vow. After the call he sat in silence for a long time. Then he whispered, "They're getting closer." I placed my hand against his cheek. He closed his eyes, and for the first time I felt it, even if the world shattered tomorrow, tonight I was not alone. I woke in the middle of the night to cold air brushing my shoulder. Vincent was gone. The sheets still carried his warmth, but it was fading quickly, like someone was tearing away my sense of safety. I rose, pulled on a thin jacket, and stepped into the hallway. The silence there was sharp enough to cut. I walked barefoot, each step slow, my heartbeat pounding so loud I feared he would hear me before I reached him. I found him by a window on the second floor. He stood completely still, staring into the darkness, phone pressed to his ear. His fingers tapped the screen before lifting it. I could not hear the words. He spoke in a whisper, but I saw the tension in his shoulders and the deep line between his brows. I stood so long the chill sank into my bones, yet I could not step closer. I was torn between demanding the truth and fearing it. When he finally turned, he slid the phone into his pocket. He looked startled to see me, but quickly masked it with a smile. He told me everything was fine, that I should rest, that he was simply checking something important. I nodded, but inside a wave of jealousy rose, bitter and burning. Who had he called? What was he hiding? Was it his past, or mine? His eyes were tired, but beneath the exhaustion lived a fierce determination. I wanted to trust him, yet a crack had already formed between us. Still, when he placed a hand on my shoulder and guided me back to the room, his touch carried such warmth that even my suspicions could not extinguish it. The day began in silence. We left before dawn, Will slicing the night that softened into pink and gold. I drove with his truck ahead of me, my head crowded with questions I dared not ask. I watched him in the rearview mirror. Each time our eyes met, he turned away quickly, as though afraid I might read his thoughts. I wanted to break the silence with demands, to tear down his walls, but fear of the answer was stronger than fear of his lies. The road stretched endlessly, a narrow ribbon binding us in its trap. I looked at his hands on the wheel, steady and strong, and imagined those same hands once fastening handcuffs on people with secrets like mine. Was I just another fugitive he escorted, waiting to deliver me back into the hands of those I fled? The thought made my fingers clench until the bones whitened. Yet when he passed me a bottle of water, I felt my heartbeat falter and then race. Such a simple gesture, warmer than any words. I drank, and my body betrayed me. I was falling in love. A love as dangerous as a cliff edge, perhaps doomed, but unstoppable. I longed to stay near him, even if every mile together brought us closer to ruin. We stopped at an abandoned motel, a husk of its former self. Windows were boarded, doors hung loose, walls carried peeling flowered wallpaper that looked like ghosts. Inside, silence pressed against us like a warning. This place remembered more than it gave away. I settled on the floor with my backpack for a pillow, watching Vincent patrol the shadows. His steps were measured, focused, like a man who lived on the edge too long. He tested the doors, peered into corners, his hand never far from the gun in his pocket. I wanted to shout at him, "I am not a prisoner, I have the right to truth, you cannot hide everything from me." The words rose to my throat, but I swallowed them each time. Fear of losing him outweighed my hunger for answers. When he finally returned, he tossed me a blanket without a word. I took it like an uneasy truce. He sat down beside me, back against the wall. I gathered courage and rested my head on his shoulder. In that moment 2 fires burned inside me, love and jealousy. His warmth steadied me, but the questions clawed beneath my skin. Who had he spoken to that night? Why not tell me? His silence was louder than screams. And I realized the desert was not dangerous only because of those who hunted us. It was dangerous because every touch between us was a spark, and our hearts were dry gunpowder, waiting for the smallest suspicion to ignite. I woke to the distant hum of an engine. At first I thought it was a dream, but the windows shook with the vibration. My heart pounded in my ears. I crept barefoot across the floor and peered through a crack. Headlights slashed the night like blades. Vincent was already awake, standing with his gun raised. His whole body was taut, a bowstring ready to snap. The car stopped a short distance away. A door creaked open. A figure stepped out. We both froze. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle a gasp. Vincent aimed, fingers steady on the trigger. The silence was so thick I could hear the blood rushing in my head. The figure lifted a hand, gesturing no threat, then returned to the car. The engine roared, tires spun, and it drove off into the desert, leaving dust and our frayed nerves behind. Vincent lowered the gun, sat heavily beside me, still staring into the dark. His fingers trembled though he tried to hide it. I touched his hand, he flinched but did not pull away. He whispered that if they ever found us, he would not let them take me. His voice held more fear than strength, and yet more strength than fear. And in that moment I understood, I was jealous even of the danger itself, because it stole his peace from me. We set off again before the sun had fully risen. The desert stretched in hues of gold and red. I watched Vincent's profile, strong jaw, lips slow to smile, eyes darker than the land itself. Desire swelled in me to touch him, to melt the stone he carried inside. Our cars moved like twin ships sailing parallel seas. I caught myself wishing he belonged only to me, without secrets, without hidden calls, without shadows trailing from the past. Jealousy burned me raw, yet it made my love fiercer. Then he glanced at me, and a rare smile touched his mouth. It melted something frozen within. I reached out, laced my fingers with his. He gripped my hand so firmly it felt like a pact with fate. Softly I said that even if we fall together, I will not regret it. He didn't answer, but his eyes shone with something greater than words. At that moment I knew, my love was stronger than fear, stronger than jealousy. Even in this merciless desert, we carried a flame worth protecting, a light stronger than the darkness that hunted us. The day felt endless. The sun climbed higher, and the desert blazed like a sea of molten sand. I stared out the window, watching mirages quiver above the asphalt, as if the road itself wanted to trick us. Vincent stayed silent, his hands gripping the wheel as if it were the only anchor keeping him in this world. I sensed something gnawing at him, and his silence was heavier than any confession. I longed to ask, to force the truth from him, but feared the wall I would meet. My love battled my jealousy. Every time his gaze turned away, I imagined unseen figures who still held sway over him, and it twisted inside me. Yet by his side I felt more alive than I had in years. Memories of my own betrayal surfaced, times I had trusted the wrong people, and they made the present even more fragile. When we stopped for a rest, he handed me a sandwich wrapped in paper. My hands trembled as I took it. Such an ordinary gesture, but it was his way of caring. Our eyes met, and I confessed aloud for the first time that I was not afraid of enemies, but of him leaving me alone. He looked at me for a long moment, then said he had already made his choice, that the road ahead belonged to us both. His words were simple, yet they shattered the ice I had carried for years. For the first time I believed we were not wandering aimlessly, but moving toward something greater. Night caught us still on the road. We found a ruined bus stop in the middle of the desert, where once people might have bought tickets and coffee. Now only concrete walls and cracked posters remained. I sat on the cold bench, listening to the wind slip through the cracks, while Vincent searched the corners with wary eyes. His vigilance seeped into me until I no longer knew if I feared the pursuers or my own doubts. When he finally sat beside me, I asked why he had never told me the truth about the phone call that night. He stared at me in silence so long I thought he would never speak. Then he said it was his habit to check if the past was catching up to him, and the call had been his way to measure time. I didn't fully believe him, yet I saw no lies in his eyes, only fatigue, pain, and shame. Jealousy rose again, but stronger was my will to keep him close. I touched his hand and told him I wanted the whole truth, even if it destroyed us. He shook his head, whispered that truth can be more dangerous than a bullet. We sat together, our shadows blending into one on the cracked wall. And I knew this night tied love and jealousy so tightly inside me that I could no longer separate them. Still, I was certain, if danger came, I would not run. My life without him no longer existed. I woke to his touch. Vincent stood over me, outlined by pale dawn light seeping through broken windows. He said it was time to move, we had lingered too long in one place. My body felt heavy from the night's confessions, but we gathered our things and drove on. In the rearview mirror I noticed a black SUV trailing us at a steady distance. It did not rush, did not retreat. My heart slammed so hard I called his name. He saw it too. His face stayed calm, but his jaw clenched tight. We veered suddenly off the highway, turning onto a dirt road that led deeper into the desert. Dust swirled up around us, the sun blazing white in our eyes. The SUV followed. Vincent told me to stay close and pressed harder on the gas. The desert blurred into a storm of sand and light. Fear clawed at me, but stronger than fear was the sense that he was mine completely now, his eyes fierce, his hands steady, fighting not only for his life but for mine. In that moment my jealousy burned away, consumed by adrenaline. I understood, love was not only tenderness, not only kisses. Love was this, someone ready to die for you, and you ready to die for them. And I was ready. We turned onto a narrow dirt track between cliffs. Sand rose in clouds behind us, the road twisting like a trap. The SUV clung close, headlights flashing in the mirror like a predator's eyes. My body was wound tight, nails digging into my palms. Vincent said nothing, his focus unbroken, and I feared even a word might shatter it. Ahead loomed the skeletal frame of an old bridge, long since dried of its river. He braked hard, spun the truck broadside across the path. I knew what he meant to do. He stepped out, gun drawn, a dark figure against the sun. The SUV slowed, stopped a few meters away. Silence stretched. Then a man in a dark suit emerged, face hidden by sunglasses, hands raised. He shouted he only wanted to talk. My stomach twisted. Did Vincent know him? Their eyes met, something unspoken passing between them, too familiar. The man said there could be no bloodshed if Vincent surrendered me. His words cut like knives. I waited for Vincent's response, terror worse than bullets. He stood unmoving, finger tight on the trigger. Finally he spoke, voice low but steady. I was not going anywhere, and if anyone tried, he would shoot. The man lowered his hands, returned to the car, and drove away in a storm of dust. I stood frozen, every emotion warring in me, love, fear, jealousy, gratitude. I knew then, there was no turning back. We were bound tighter than chains, and that bond was the greatest danger of all. The air between us and the stranger had been stretched like a wire ready to snap. Vincent's gun never wavered, his gaze sharp as a blade. The man in the suit edged closer, hands lifted, his voice calm as he said we could not escape, that the desert closed more roads than it opened. He spoke my name, and my blood ran cold. How did he know me? I turned to Vincent, searching his eyes. Did he know this man? Their locked gaze seemed threaded with history. Jealousy knifed through me, was this his past entangled with mine? The man said no blood need be shed if Vincent handed me over. The words stabbed deep. I held my breath for Vincent's reply. He did not flinch. His voice was low, rough with steel. I was not going anywhere. If anyone tried, he would kill them. In that instant, I knew I was no burden. I was his choice, one he had made knowingly. The man dropped his hands, retreated, and left us in a cloud of heat and silence. I could not move. My heart was a storm of emotions, fear, love, jealousy, devotion. Vincent stood before me, and I understood we were bound not by escape, but by defiance. And that bond itself was what made us most vulnerable. When the dust settled and we were alone again, I looked at Vincent as if seeing him for the first time. His face was stern, yet in the corners of his eyes I saw exhaustion that betrayed how worn he truly was inside. I stepped closer and touched his hand. He did not pull away, but he did not return the touch either. The silence between us was heavier than any words. Jealousy stirred in me again. Who was that man? Why did he speak my name, and why did he look at Vincent as though they shared a secret past? I wanted to demand the truth, but feared breaking something fragile. We drove on, the sun painting his profile in molten gold. My heart was torn between love burning me alive and jealousy ripping me apart. At an abandoned shed we stopped, and he finally spoke. He said the man was someone from his police years, that the past always returns, and that now it had found him through me. His words twisted inside me. Was it the whole truth or only a fragment? I wanted to believe, but felt walls still stood between us. Yet when he took my hand and looked at me as though the rest of the world had ceased to exist, I knew, even if he lied, I would stay. My love was stronger than my doubt. We left the cars by the old shed and went inside to wait for night. The air smelled of rust, dust, and old wood that cracked with each gust of wind. I sank onto a pile of sacks, hugging my knees, while Vincent lit a fire in a metal barrel. Shadows danced on the walls like ghosts. For a long time we said nothing, only listened to the fire's crackle and sand scratching outside. My chest tightened with questions. I asked why the man had known my name. Vincent looked at me, and his gaze was so heavy it almost made me turn away. He said they had been watching me longer than I believed, that my past was less hidden than I imagined. His voice was steady, but beneath it I felt anger, at them, at himself, perhaps at fate. I whispered my greatest fear, not enemies, but that he might be part of them. His face tightened with pain, but he did not deny me. He said he had thought of leaving me many times, to keep me safe, but every time he stayed because he could not let go. My jealousy faltered, replaced by something warmer. I leaned against him, and his arms closed around me as though to shield me from the whole world. The fire in the barrel dimmed, but between us another fire burned, one no night could extinguish. The night dragged on inside the shed. I lay awake, listening to the wind rattle the boards. Vincent never slept. He sat by the door, gun in hand, his outline carved by the moonlight. He looked like a sentinel guarding not only me but the fragile bond we had forged. Inside me, two flames clashed, the urge to trust and the poison of jealousy. I imagined him thinking of others, of ghosts from his past, and it tore at me. Near dawn I rose and touched his shoulder. He flinched but did not push me away. I whispered that my greatest fear was not being hunted but being abandoned. His eyes, red from sleeplessness, still held unshaken resolve. He said even if the world burned, he would not release me. His voice trembled, and that made his vow even more true. I felt jealousy dissolve in his promise. We sat on the cold floor together, his arms wrapped tightly around me. For the first time I fell asleep in his embrace. I dreamed of the sea, of waves breaking against the shore, and of us walking hand in hand, fearless. When I woke, I knew, even if the dream never became reality, I would fight for it with him. Morning was cold though the sun already blazed above the desert. The wind hit my face with sand, reminding me this land forgives nothing. Vincent looked exhausted but his eyes still burned with determination. We packed our things and drove deeper into the canyon, cliffs rising on either side like walls closing in. I felt we were being herded there by design. When we stopped by an old concrete beam, he confessed he feared not for himself but for me. He said they would never stop, no border would hold them, they would always find me. His words cut like a blade. My jealousy surged again. Was it his past entwined with mine that doomed us both? I wanted to accuse him, to scream, but instead I reached for his hand. My body chose love where my mind could not. I whispered that I loved him, even if tomorrow we were gone. His expression shifted, as though something inside him broke at last. He pulled me close, and our lips met in a kiss that was no tenderness but a vow to the merciless world. The cliffs echoed our hearts, and I knew, we were no longer just fugitives. We were a challenge thrown at fate itself, and that made us stronger than the danger surrounding us. By the time we reached the canyon's end, the sun stood high, scorching the air into a trembling veil. I felt the end coming, though I could not tell if it was the end of our flight or of us. The roar of engines behind told me they had caught us. Vincent stopped, stepped out, and stood before me like a wall ready to take the hit. My chest filled with a storm, love tearing me open, jealousy that no longer mattered, fear melting in his presence. The enemy cars halted meters away. Men emerged, shadows shaped by my past. They shouted, demanded he hand me over. But I was no longer afraid. I stepped forward and declared they would only have me with him. Vincent looked at me as if realizing we were no longer two but one. He held me, his heartbeat racing as fast as mine. Time stretched, each second eternal. I knew the next could be our last, yet peace replaced fear. Because the love we had carried through the desert was a light no enemy could smother. Even if we fell here, our story was already proof that love can triumph where hope does not exist. They advanced, and I gripped his hand tighter. In that moment I understood, the outcome no longer mattered. What mattered was that we were together.